My name is Carolyn Hayes, and I'm 32 years old. If you'd met me 2 years ago, you would have said I looked content, maybe even lucky. I had a job that didn't drain me, a small apartment with soft morning light, and a boyfriend who said I made him feel calm. It took me a long time to realize that calm was just another word for boring in his vocabulary. The story starts with the sentence that keeps echoing in my head. "You make me feel calm," Carolyn Trevor said, pausing just long enough for the knife twist, but not alive. At first, I laughed. I thought it was one of those melodramatic things people say when they're restless or scared of their own stability. But he didn't laugh back. He looked detached, like he'd already rehearsed the line. Trevor and I had been together for 2.5 years, moved in after about one. When we met, he was still patching himself up from a relationship that nearly broke him, a woman named Diana. Everyone who met her had an opinion. Magnetic, they said. Intense. I only heard the darker details from Trevor himself. The manipulation, the cheating, the chaos dressed up as passion. He came to me wrecked. I didn't try to fix him. I just listened, held space, reminded him what peace felt like. I became, in his words, his safe place. It's funny how people romanticize peace until they have to live inside it. For a long time, things were good. He worked at a design firm. I freelanced from home. We cooked together, fought rarely, and laughed easily. On Sundays, he'd make coffee while I sat on the windowsill, writing the city humming quietly below. There was a gentleness in the way we existed, steady, predictable, almost invisible. Then everything started shifting around the time he got promoted. The change wasn't sudden. It crept in like fog. New wardrobe, new posture, new circles of people who said things like, "We vibe" instead of "we agree." He started posting photos again, mirror selfies, rooftop drinks, filtered sunsets with cryptic captions. I noticed. Of course I did. But I told myself people evolve. We should evolve with them. Then one night, while scrolling through his phone at the table, Trevor said it like it was nothing. "I ran into Diana at the office launch thing last weekend." My fingers froze around the spoon I was washing. He kept talking casually, thumb swiping the screen. "She's different now. Been through therapy, apparently." I said nothing. My silence was my seatbelt. Trevor looked at me, searching for a reaction, maybe a fight. But I just nodded and went back to rinsing dishes. Inside, something cracked quietly like wood, splintering under too much weight. Later that night, I lay beside him, pretending to sleep. His breathing was steady. Mine wasn't. I stared at the ceiling and thought about how nostalgia works like perfume. It can make even the rot smell beautiful if you close your eyes long enough. A few days later, he mentioned her again. And again. Each time her name softened on his tongue. "She's trying to make amends," he said one evening, as if reading from a script written for someone else's redemption. I told myself not to panic. People can forgive without reopening doors, right? But the tone in his voice told me otherwise. There's a look people wear when they've already decided on something but haven't yet confessed it. It's not guilt, it's anticipation. I started seeing that look every time Trevor mentioned Diana. One Thursday night, while we were cleaning up dinner, he dropped the line that changed everything. "I'm getting drinks with Diana tomorrow." I stopped drying the plate in my hand. The air in the kitchen thick and heavy with all the words I wasn't ready to speak. Why, I asked, keeping my voice even. He didn't look up, just shrugged. "Just to catch up, clear the air. It's not a big deal." I set the plate down slowly. "You do realize how that sounds, right?" What his tone snapped, defensive, irritated. "It's literally just drinks. You're overreacting." That word, overreacting, the one men use when they've already decided your intuition is inconvenient. "You haven't spoken to her in 2 years, I said quietly. "You cried in my arms over what she did to you." He wiped his hands, exhaled sharply. "People change, Carolyn. You always say communication is healthy. Why are you being like this?" And there it was, the twist of irony that stung worse than betrayal itself. I looked at him and saw not the man I loved, but the man I'd been preparing to lose without admitting it. "You're right," I said finally. "You're free to do whatever you want." He blinked, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "Thank you," he muttered, annoyed. "I don't need permission." "No," I replied softly, "but now you won't need forgiveness either." He hesitated just for a moment, then rolled his eyes and left the room. That night I sat alone on the couch long after the lights went out. The city outside kept moving, horns, footsteps, laughter, but inside everything went still. I thought about the first time he told me he loved me. It was raining, and we were stuck under a cafe awning, sharing one umbrella and one heartbeat. He said he'd never met someone who made him feel safe. I used to believe that meant forever. Now I knew it just meant until he got bored. As I closed my eyes, the words replayed in my head like a curse he'd already forgotten. He said, "You make me feel calm, but not alive." I whispered into the darkness, half to myself, half to the version of him I still wanted to believe in. People don't relapse into love, they relapse into illusion. And I knew even before he left for that drink that something sacred in us had already ended. Trevor didn't come home the next night until after midnight. The apartment door creaked open like it didn't recognize him anymore. He smelled of whiskey and that same floral musk I once found in a jacket he threw away, the one Diana used to wear when they were still together. He dropped his keys in the bowl, took off his shoes, and said, "Relax, I'm home." Like being physically present, canceled out emotional absence. I didn't answer, not because I was trying to punish him, because I didn't trust my own voice not to break. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the kitchen, cruelly bright. Trevor moved around the counter, making coffee, humming a tune that didn't belong to our world anymore. He didn't mention the drink. I didn't ask. The silence between us stretched like glass, thin, fragile, transparent enough to see the end through it. But endings, I've learned, never announce themselves. They leak quietly through repetition. He started texting more, laughing at messages I wasn't part of. I caught his reflection, smiling at his phone more times than I could count. When I walked by, the screen would go dark. Every time it happened, I felt myself shrink a little smaller, trying to fit into a space that was already being emptied. One evening, while I was slicing vegetables for dinner, I caught him taking a mirror selfie in our bedroom, something he hadn't done in years. His shirt was unbuttoned, one too many buttons, his expression practiced. He noticed me in the doorway and laughed. "It's just for work," he said, but his eyes didn't match the joke. By the time we sat down to eat, the air was so heavy that the sound of cutlery felt like thunder. "I saw your post," I said, casually forcing a smile. "Nice photo." He grinned. "Yeah, Diana said I look older in a good way." The fork slipped from my fingers. I didn't ask why she was saying anything to him again. I didn't want to hear the answer I already knew. That night I dreamt of water, thick rising, pulling me under. When I woke, the pillow was damp, my chest tight. Grief doesn't need a body count to feel like drowning. A week later, the inevitable conversation arrived. It was a Thursday. The smell of stir-fry filled the kitchen. I was drying a plate when he cleared his throat. "So, I'm getting drinks with Diana again tomorrow." It wasn't even a confession, just a casual scheduling note like saying I'll be home late. I put the plate down slowly. "Why?" He didn't look up. "She wants closure. It's not a big deal." My throat tightened. "Trevor, you cried for months after her. You said she broke you." He scoffed. "People change. And not everything has to mean something dramatic. You always think the worst." "No," I said quietly. "I just remember." That's when he turned, defensive voice rising. "You're suffocating me with this constant suspicion. You want me to be honest, right? I'm telling you. I'm meeting her, and somehow that's wrong too." I wanted to scream that honesty doesn't count if you've already decided to lie to yourself, but all I said was, "You're free to do whatever you need, Trevor." He stared at me for a long second, like trying to decode whether it was a trap. "You're unbelievable," he muttered. "You always act like you're above emotions." I smiled faintly. Someone has to be. He slammed the cabinet shut and stormed out. The next day, he didn't text once. By 10 p.m., I stopped checking my phone. By midnight, I stopped pretending I wasn't waiting for the sound of the key turning in the lock. When he finally returned, I caught the faintest trace of expensive whiskey and the floral scent again. He looked lighter, like guilt was something that evaporated on contact with pleasure. "You're still up?" he asked, startled to see me awake on the couch. I couldn't sleep. He shrugged. "Relax, Carolyn. It was just drinks." "Just drinks," I repeated, tasting the lie. He smiled, kissed the top of my head, and went to shower. I didn't move, didn't cry. I just sat there listening to the sound of running water and realized how easily intimacy becomes noise. The days after blurred together in fragments. Trevor's phone was always face down now. He'd startle when notifications buzzed. Once I caught him typing D into his messages before turning the screen away. It wasn't the secrecy that broke me. It was the indifference, the casualness of it all. I stopped asking questions. He stopped pretending to answer them. We became two people living parallel lives under one roof. He laughed at his phone. I laughed at my silence. And every night when I turned off the lamp, I stared at the ceiling and thought of Diana, the ghost in our apartment, the woman who had become the third shadow in every room. One evening, I found a wine glass in the sink that wasn't mine. Lipstick smudge, dark crimson. Not my shade. I didn't ask. What was the point? The truth had already moved out. I started going to bed earlier. He started coming home later. I heard him laugh in the hallway once, low and unfamiliar, like the sound belonged to someone else entirely. The final straw wasn't loud. It wasn't a fight or a confession. It was the way he looked at me across the room one morning, calm, polite, indifferent. That look people give to strangers they might have once known in another lifetime. And in that glance, I understood I wasn't losing him. I'd already lost him, weeks ago. I remember whispering to myself as he left for work that day, "You can't compete with a ghost someone keeps resurrecting." The echo of my own voice filled the empty apartment. I stood there barefoot on the cold kitchen tiles and realized I was mourning someone who hadn't even died, just disappeared into memory. It happened on an ordinary night, the kind that fools you into thinking everything is fine because nothing looks broken yet. Trevor sat on one end of the couch, scrolling through his phone, laughing softly at something I wasn't part of. I was on the other end, pretending to watch a documentary I couldn't absorb a single frame of. When the laughter stopped, I muted the TV. "Can we talk?" I asked. He sighed, exasperated, before the conversation even began. About what now? I looked at him, not the way you look at someone you love, but the way you look at someone you finally see clearly. "I know you've been seeing her." He didn't even flinch, didn't deny it, just looked bored. "It's not like that," he said flatly. "Then what's it like?" He stared at the wall for a moment before saying, "We kissed." There it was. The words I'd known were coming, said so casually they almost sounded harmless. I exhaled slowly, not surprised, just tired. "So what now?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe we rushed into this. I mean, we're good, Carolyn, but maybe not passionate." My chest went hollow. "Not passionate," I repeated. He looked at me almost defensive. "I still care about you. He hesitated. "I miss feeling alive." That line hit like a quiet explosion. He said it so earnestly, as if it were noble to destroy something stable just to chase a pulse. I nodded, forcing the air back into my lungs. "So that's it." He rubbed his face. "You're overreacting. I just need space to figure things out." I stood up. "Then take all the space you want." "Carolyn, come on, don't make this dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic," I said softly. "I'm being done." He blinked confused, like he didn't understand what that word meant when applied to me. I packed my bag in silence. No yelling, no begging, no tears. Just the steady rhythm of zippers and drawers. Trevor watched from the doorway, jaw tight. "You're really leaving over this?" "Yes." "You're unbelievable." "No," I said, turning to face him. "I just finally believe myself." I walked out before he could answer. The next morning, I woke up in a small, short-term rental on the other side of town. It wasn't much thin walls, flickering, bathroom light, the hum of traffic below, but it was quiet. And for the first time in years, that quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, staring at the duffel bag that held everything I'd salvaged from our life. Half my clothes, my laptop, a photo album I hadn't had the heart to open. I thought I'd cry. Instead, I laughed a dry, disbelieving sound. Because the strangest part wasn't losing him. It was realizing how much of myself I'd already given away before I left. I spent the next few days drifting between numbness and clarity. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not my friends, not my family. I needed silence more than sympathy. People love to offer comfort when they don't know what else to do. "You're better off. He'll regret it." At least he was honest. Honest, no. Honesty isn't telling the truth after you've already lived the lie. So I said nothing. On the fifth night alone, I found myself sitting on the floor with a half-empty glass of wine, staring at the city lights through the window. The reflection looked like someone else's life, a woman who looked calm, but felt like a house that had already burned down. I replayed every moment, every conversation, looking for the one that might have saved us. But the truth was uglier than regret. There was no saving something that was already dying of neglect. Love doesn't always end in betrayal. Sometimes it ends in boredom, in quiet, tiny deaths of attention. I realized I'd spent months trying to convince him that peace didn't mean lifelessness, that security wasn't a prison. But to someone addicted to chaos, calm is suffocation. A week later, I finally called a therapist. It wasn't a dramatic decision, just a quiet surrender to the idea that maybe I didn't have to carry this alone. Her office smelled like lemon and old paper. I told her about Trevor, about Diana, about how I kept mistaking emotional control for strength. She smiled gently and said, "You can't fix someone by becoming smaller." That line stuck with me. I realized how many times I'd shrunk to make space for his comfort. How often I'd bitten my tongue to keep the peace, how I'd confused patience with self-erasure. Maybe that's what people mean when they say love makes you blind, not to red flags, but to your own fading reflection. By the end of that week, I felt something close to acceptance. Not forgiveness, not peace, just a small, clean ache that told me I was alive. I started walking every morning before sunrise. The air was cold, the streets empty, and the world felt honest again. No performance, no pretending, just breath. Each morning, I left a little more of him behind. One night while journaling, I wrote a sentence that felt truer than anything I'd said in months. Maturity isn't keeping calm while someone chips away at your worth, it's walking out before they finish. And for the first time since I left, I slept through the night. 6 weeks passed, long enough for heartbreak to stop feeling cinematic. The days started to blend together, but not in that dizzy, depressive way they used to. I had a new rhythm now: wake early, run, shower, work, therapy, sleep. My body moved through the world without waiting for permission. My thoughts no longer orbited around what Trevor might be doing or who he was doing it with. Still, every so often, I'd catch myself glancing at my phone when a notification buzzed. Old habits die, soft, not hard. The first text came on a Tuesday night. Hey, just wondering how you've been. No pressure to reply. I didn't reply, because pressure wasn't the problem. The problem was the quiet arrogance in thinking he still deserved my attention. A few days later, I miss our talks. Everything feels so loud now. You always knew how to calm me down. That was the line that almost made me laugh. He wanted the calm again. The thing he once said made him feel dead inside. I deleted the message, turned off my phone, and went to bed. By the end of that week, I heard through mutual friends what I already suspected. Trevor and Diana had burned bright and fast flames, always do. She was seeing other people, whatever that meant. He was back to drinking too much, sleeping too little, and pretending it was freedom. A friend from our old circle texted me. Saw Trevor and Diana at Mason's party. They looked weird, like pretending to be okay. He didn't look happy. I didn't respond. What was there to say? A few nights later, another message from someone else. He was flirting with a waitress while Diana was in the bathroom. Same old Trevor. I read it, smiled sadly, and archived the chat. People wanted to tell me I'd won, but heartbreak isn't a competition. It's a detox. You don't win, you just learn to live without your drug. Then came the third message from him. Diana and I aren't seeing each other anymore. It was a mistake. You were right. That one stung not because I missed him, but because of the simplicity of it. You were right. I didn't want to be right. I wanted to be respected. So I did nothing. Silence was my final act of self-respect. 2 days later, his tone shifted. Wow. Ignoring me after everything? You think you're better than me now? Fine. Go live your boring little life. I stared at the screen for a long time before blocking the number, not out of anger, out of mercy for both of us. The weeks that followed were strangely peaceful. I went back to writing slowly at first, then obsessively. Stories poured out about lost illusions, women who learned to breathe again. None of them were about Trevor, but he lived in the margins of every paragraph. Therapy helped me realize something simple but life-altering. I'd built my identity around being the calm one, the healer, the soft landing. But peace that costs your own boundaries isn't peace, it's performance. A month later, I got an unexpected message from his mother. Carolyn, I heard what happened. I just want you to know we still care about you. I stared at it, then smiled faintly. Even she understood the aftermath better than he did. Rumors kept circulating, as they always do. Diana had apparently gotten tired of him. Told mutual friends he was emotionally draining. He'd started showing up drunk to work, missed deadlines, got written up. Someone even sent me a screenshot Trevor's social post with the caption, "Real love is messy," a photo of him and Diana smiling too wide. 2 days later, the post was deleted. It wasn't satisfying. It wasn't revenge. It was just predictable. Watching him unravel wasn't joy. It was confirmation that I was never crazy for feeling what I felt. Meanwhile, I was changing in quieter ways. I'd started going to yoga on Sundays. I took a pottery class on a whim. I painted the walls of my new apartment soft sage green. Every inch of space I claimed for myself felt like recovery. I didn't post anything about it. No quotes about healing, no hashtags about self-love. I didn't need the world to know I was moving on. It was enough that I knew. Then one evening, in late autumn, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, another message appeared on my screen. I'm not okay. I made a huge mistake. You were the only one who ever really saw me. I read it twice. My heart didn't race. My eyes didn't sting. All I felt was a distant kind of pity. The kind you feel when you recognize someone still living inside the fire you escaped. I set the phone down, took a deep breath, and whispered, "That's your lesson, Trevor, not my rescue." The city outside was loud again. Cars, laughter, sirens, but inside there was peace. Real peace this time, the kind that doesn't depend on being someone's shelter. Because I wasn't his calm anymore. I was my own. It was raining the night Trevor came back. Not a soft drizzle, the kind that whispers, but the heavy soaking kind that drums on windows like it's demanding to be heard. I had just come back from the gym, earbuds, still in hoodie-damp grocery bag cutting into my wrist. And there he was, standing at the front of my apartment building like a ghost who'd forgotten he was dead. For a second, I thought I was imagining it, but then he said softly, "Hey." He looked smaller somehow. Not thinner exactly, just deflated. His posture had collapsed in on itself, his eyes ringed with the kind of exhaustion that only guilt or heartbreak can carve. "Trevor." That was all I said. No warmth, no venom. Just his name, like an acknowledgement of a story I'd already finished reading. He took a hesitant step forward, rain dripping from his hood. "Can we talk?" I glanced at the clock glowing through my window upstairs. It was nearly 10:30. I should have said no. But closure has a way of dressing up like curiosity, and I was tired enough to let it in. I sighed, stepped aside, and held the door open. 5 minutes. Inside, he stood by the hallway like he didn't belong to gravity. Water pooled under his shoes. I handed him a towel without looking directly at him. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "I know," he whispered. I didn't know where else to go." He said it like I was still the emergency contact he'd deleted, but never replaced. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was rain against the window, steady and unforgiving. Then he broke. "Diana used me," he said, voice cracking. "She said she wanted to start fresh, but she just wanted someone to blame when she got bored. She found someone else, Carolyn. Someone richer, someone louder." I crossed my arms. "You always did mistake noise for love." He flinched, looking down. I was stupid. "No," I said quietly. "You were selfish. Stupid implies innocence." His lips parted, but no words came. He finally sat on the edge of the couch, dripping rainwater onto the rug. "I didn't come here to make excuses. He looked up at me, desperate. I wanted to say I'm sorry. "You already did," I said. "Every time you chose her." He blinked, confused. "That's not what I meant." "I know," I said. "But it's what you did." He rubbed his face, groaned. "You don't understand. I thought she'd changed. She told me she did therapy. She said she wanted to heal things. And you believed her because you wanted an excuse to feel something I finished for him." He looked up sharply, guilt flickering into anger. "You think you're so above it all, don't you? Like you're perfect." I shook my head slowly. "No. I just learned the difference between saving someone and setting myself on fire for them." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. He exhaled, shoulders slumping. "I thought you'd fight for me. You know, I thought if I pushed you, you'd prove you cared." I almost laughed. "You thought hurting me would make me love you harder." He didn't answer. His silence was admission enough. "Trevor," I said gently, "that's not love. That's control. You confused conflict with passion because peace felt too quiet for you." He looked at me, eyes wet, not from the rain this time. "You were the calm I needed. I just didn't realize it until it was gone." I held his gaze for a long moment. "No," I said softly. "You realized it the moment it stopped serving you." He swallowed hard. "I don't know how to fix it." "You don't," I said. "You let it stay broken." For the first time since he arrived, he cried. Not performative tears, but real ones, the kind that come when there's nothing left to manipulate. "You were always so calm," he said between shaky breaths. "So kind. I didn't realize how rare that was." "I wasn't calm," I said. "I was careful, and I wasn't kind. I was scared that if I didn't keep the peace, you'd leave. Turns out you left anyway." He looked up at me, completely undone. I don't want this to be it." "This was it, the moment you decided my peace was your problem," I replied. He stood up slowly, the towel slipping from his hands. "So that's it. That's it." He hesitated at the door. Rain echoed faintly in the stairwell. "You really don't miss me at all?" he asked quietly. I thought about it for a moment, and then I told him the truth. "I miss the version of me who believed you could love me right." His face crumpled. "That's cold." "No," I said, stepping closer. "That's clarity." He lingered a second longer, searching for a trace of the woman who once would have begged him to stay. But she wasn't there anymore. I opened the door. "You should go, Trevor." He nodded weakly, eyes glassy. "You really changed." I met his gaze steady. "No, I finally stopped changing for you." He left without another word. The sound of the door clicking shut was softer than I expected, but it felt final, like a full stop at the end of a sentence that had gone on too long. I stood there for a while, staring at the door, my chest strangely light. The rain outside began to fade, replaced by the hum of the city resuming its rhythm. I whispered to the empty room, "You wanted to feel alive, Trevor. Now you just feel." Then I turned off the lights, walked to my bedroom, and closed the door behind me. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. 6 months later, I almost didn't recognize my own life. The apartment looked different, brighter, softer. Plants lined the windowsill, sunlight pooling in gentle gold over the wooden floor. The air smelled faintly of sandalwood and coffee. I'd stopped living in survival mode. And somewhere in the quiet, Eli happened. He wasn't a grand entrance, more like a steady tide. We met at a small gallery opening where I'd gone alone for the first time in years. He noticed the way I lingered too long in front of a painting, a simple landscape calm but full of movement. That one feels like exhale, he said. That was our beginning. Eli was everything Trevor wasn't. Gentle without being dull, present without being suffocating. The kind of man who listened without planning his reply. We didn't rush. We didn't need to. I wasn't looking for someone to rescue me. I just wanted someone who could stand next to me without asking me to shrink. Then came the wedding invitation. Cora, a mutual friend from the old circle, was getting married. The name on the invitation stirred something nostalgia or unease, I couldn't tell. I almost declined. You should go, Eli said. You've got nothing to prove, but you deserve to be seen. He was right. So I went. The venue was a garden lit by string lights, the kind of evening that feels suspended between seasons. Soft jazz, murmured laughter, clinking glasses. I wore a navy dress and my hair pinned low. Eli held my hand as we entered, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone who belonged in her own skin. It didn't take long to feel his eyes on me. Trevor was standing near the bar alone, a glass of champagne untouched in his hand. He looked older, not in the way time ages you, but in the way regret erodes you from the inside out. He saw me before I saw him. I felt it. That sudden stillness in the air, the vacuum of sound that happens when history tries to rewind itself. I turned, caught his gaze, and smiled politely, a stranger's smile, then looked away. But fate or irony had other plans. When Eli went to greet someone he knew, Trevor walked over. You look good, he said. His voice carried that same faint disbelief, as if the version of me standing there didn't match the one he left behind. Thank you, I said evenly. He gestured toward the crowd. Is that your boyfriend? Yes, his name's Eli. He's handsome. He is, I agreed. He nodded, eyes darting to the floor. You look happy. I am. A small, awkward laugh escaped him. It's weird seeing you like this. You used to feel so safe, like home. I didn't smile. That's what made it easy for you to leave. His breath caught. He tried to recover with a half-hearted chuckle. Guess I deserve that. I didn't say it to hurt you. He looked up. Then why does it? Because truth usually does. For a while, neither of us spoke. Around us, music played, and people laughed, but it felt like we were standing inside a glass bubble, our own little echo chamber of what used to be. Finally, he said I didn't think I'd regret it this much. I tilted my head. You didn't think at all, Trevor. His eyes flickered. I was stupid. I thought I wanted passion. I thought Diana was excitement. But she never loved me, not like you did. What I gave you wasn't passion, Trevor, I said quietly. It was peace. And you called it boring. He swallowed hard. I didn't know how rare that was until it was gone. No, I said. You knew. You just didn't care. He flinched the way people do when the knife isn't new, but still sharp. I don't hate you, I added, but I don't miss you either. He searched my face, desperate for softness. Do you ever think about us? Not really, I said, not in any way that matters. That landed. His shoulders dropped. His gaze fell to the ground. You've really moved on, he whispered. I stopped waiting for you to understand me, I said. That's not moving on, it's waking up. Eli returned just then, placing a gentle hand on my arm. They're doing the first dance. Thanks, I said, turning to Trevor one last time. Goodbye, Trevor. He blinked, startled. That's it. That's all that's left. Can I at least have your number again? He asked softly. Maybe just stay in touch. No. He looked pained. Why not? Because there's no version of this where we exist in each other's lives anymore. I saw it hit him, the finality of it. Not cruel, just real. Take care of yourself, I said. And that was the end. As Eli and I walked toward the dance floor, I glanced back once, not at Trevor, but at the space he'd occupied. The air there felt empty now, not heavy like before. For a long time I used to think closure came from answers. Now I knew it came from indifference. Trevor had been the lesson. Eli was the piece. And I was the proof that even the quietest people can rebuild from the loudest heartbreaks. When the music swelled and the lights dimmed, Eli pulled me close. You okay? He whispered. I smiled. More than okay. He kissed my forehead. You seem free. I am, I said. Finally. As we danced under the golden glow of the string lights, I caught my reflection in the glass doors, steady, calm, alive. The narrator of her own story, no longer someone else's pause between storms. And in that reflection, I understood something simple and final. Love without respect is just noise. Silence, when chosen, is kindness.